The air tastes of frankincense and river mud. It coats the back of your throat like an identity you were born into, like a command issued before you drew your first breath, one you have been executing every waking hour of your life. You are not standing in a museum. You are not reading a placard. You are here, inside the greatest concentration of organized human power the ancient world ever produced. And the sun now bleeding up over the eastern horizon is not a sunrise. It is a resurrection. Because in this world, in this civilization that endured 3,000 years, longer than the span separating the fall of Rome from the device in your pocket, the man waking in this room is not simply a king. He is the axis around which the universe turns. The living point where heaven meets the black earth of the Nile flood. The one human being whose ritual waking is, theologically and cosmologically, the reason the sun has permission to rise at all. He is Pharaoh. And today, through cutting-edge archaeology and AI reconstruction, you're going to follow a single day in his life. One rotation of the sun, one circuit of power, ritual, and divine theater so absolute, and concealing a secret buried beneath temple stone for 3,000 years that no one was ever supposed to find. It will permanently change how you understand what it means to build a civilization meant to last forever. You are Ramesses II. It is 1270 BCE. You have been pharaoh for 9 years, and the Egypt you inhabit is nothing, nothing, like the bleached ruin in the travel photographs. It is alive. It is loud. Every column of Karnak is plastered and screaming with pigment. Deep lapis lazuli, Sinai red ochre, leaf gold beaten thin enough to tremble in the morning breeze. The city of Thebes, Waset, the scepter, holds over 100,000 people. Its streets smell of baking emmer bread, chariot horse corrals, cedar oil burning in temple lamps, and the sweet dark rot of the Nile's retreating flood. It smells of power, furiously maintained. The inundation has just retreated. The black silt, Kemet, the black land, the very root from which the name Egypt derives, still exhales warmth into the morning air. That silt is why this civilization exists. The Egyptians didn't conquer their landscape. They entered a covenant with it. The river floods, the silt falls, the crop grows, the pharaoh remains divine. Snap any single link in that chain, and the entire theological administrative architecture of the empire develops a fracture it may never survive. Your Delta Palace, the Paramesses near modern Kontir, is so vast that magnetometry surveys completed in 2019 traced its foundations across more than 3 square kilometers. Throne rooms, ceremonial lakes, stables for 2,000 horses, their individual stalls identified in subsurface magnetic data with startling precision. A city within a city, built to project one truth to every conquered king who entered its gates. There is no power above this one. There never has been. There never will be. You rise before the sun, not because habit compels you, but because your waking is the sun's cue. Your priests believe this. Your administrators believe this. The farmers watching the horizon from the flood levees believe this. In a civilization where theology is the load-bearing wall of every institution, the distinction between symbol and operational reality dissolved long ago. But here is what the painted walls never show. The rituals beginning the moment your eyes open were not designed to celebrate your power or honor your dynasty. They were designed to hold the universe together at its seams, and they had to be performed perfectly. Because according to the theology woven through every institution of this state, one mispronounced word, one skipped gesture, and the darkness waiting outside the boundaries of Ma'at would find its way in. It was always looking for a way in. By the time the sky shifts from black to deep bruised violet, 14 people have already touched your body. 14. The Sem priests enter first, robed in leopard skin, carrying the sharp mineral smell of natron salt before them like a declaration. They perform a living adaptation of the opening of the mouth ritual, normally reserved for animating the dead, to restore your divine faculties after sleep. Because sleep, in Egyptian theology, was not rest. It was a rehearsal for death, a nightly surrender to the chaos beyond Ma'at's edges, which means every morning of your reign is, in the precise theological language of your civilization, a resurrection. Every single morning, your skin is washed with water from the sacred lake at Karnak, transported under priestly supervision, a substance with its own dedicated bureaucratic supply chain. Then moringa oil from Nubian trade posts. Then linen so finely woven that surviving royal textile fragments place their thread count above 200 per inch. So fine, it appears liquid in the light. Then, the heavy blue Kepresh war crown, its surface set with small golden discs that will make you appear, to thousands assembled below, to be wearing a piece of the living sky. You eat. But that word is too small. Your morning meal. Reconstructible from Ramesses administrative papyri and corroborated by lipid residue analysis of royal ceramic vessels, includes roasted goose, white emmer bread, Levantine figs, date-fermented beer, and a broth of onion and garlic prescribed by your SADWDAS, your royal physician, for chronic inflammation in your left knee. Ramesses II, Ndani, whose image was carved 60 feet high into the cliff at Abu Simbel, had bad knees. Caused by military campaigns, he began leading as a teenager under his father Seti I. The god of Egypt needed his soup. By mid-morning, he moved to the audience hall, dispatched scrolls from the Hittite frontier, grain requisition reports, irrigation disputes. The machinery of empire turns without pause, and buried within those petition scrolls and administrative papyri, modern scholars have found something that quietly dismantles everything the throne projected, a paper trail accumulating across decades, pointing not toward the army, not toward the treasury, but toward an institution so embedded in the sacred architecture of the state that confronting it would mean dismantling the very theology that made the pharaoh divine. On one document in particular, recovered, translated, and cross-referenced against temple land registries, suggests the transfer had already passed a point of no return, decades before any pharaoh realized what had been given away. What was being accumulated wasn't wealth. It was the state itself, piece by consecrated piece. You sit in the audience hall. Petitions arrive. You answer them. To everyone in that room, vizier, treasurer, Nubian viceroy, you are the unambiguous center of all authority. And you are, in theology. In practice, the two viziers command a bureaucratic apparatus of staggering sophistication. The Wilbur Papyrus, one of the longest surviving administrative documents from ancient Egypt, now in the Brooklyn Museum, records land assignments across Middle Egypt in such granular detail that modern scholars have reconstructed the agricultural economics of an entire province from it, plot by plot, flood year by flood year, crop classification by crop classification, a civil service predating the Roman Republic by 8 centuries and functionally recognizable to any modern land registry office. And woven through all of it, accumulating quietly across generation after generation of royal favor, is the estate of Amun. By the reign of Ramesses III, just 60 years downstream from where you sit, the temples of Amun will control approximately 30% of all arable land in Egypt. They will own 900,000 head of livestock, administer 83 ships, and command a standing military force, not a ceremonial retinue, a private army. None of this happened through rebellion or conspiracy. It happened through royal piety, pharaohs donating land to the temples of gods whose patronage legitimized their rule. Each donation individually rational, each one a brick in a wall that would eventually stand taller than the throne itself. You are currently adding bricks. Machine learning text analysis of recently digitized papyri at the Institut Français d'Archéologie Orientale has revealed correspondence patterns between temple administrators and provincial governors that bypass the royal palace entirely. A shadow network of economic authority operating in plain sight, in plain writing, for centuries. If this slow structural unraveling, this theological time bomb built from acts of devotion, grips you the way it should, type "lost forever" in the comments below. The temples are building a state inside your state, and the moment is coming, carried forward on every land grant and priestly appointment, when a high priest will walk to a wall in a temple you built, pick up a chisel, and carve his own name inside a cartouche that belongs, by 3,000 years of unbroken precedent, to one man alone. He will not be stopped, because by then, there will be no one left with the power to stop him. Late afternoon, the most sacred obligation of your day, the evening ritual of a moon. Your court sits at Per Ramesses in the Delta. The ritual belongs to Karnak in Thebes, 400 miles upriver. You are not there, but the ritual does not pause for your absence. It has never paused. A proxy priest performs it in the innermost sanctuary, a room so compressed, so absolutely dark, so insulated from the living world that archaeologists working inside report the near-total absence of ambient sound. The stone seems to absorb not just noise, but time. The statue is unveiled, washed, anointed, dressed in fresh linen, addressed by name in a liturgical sequence unchanged for 200 years, then sealed behind cedar doors bolted in electrum. The priest walking backward through the outer chamber, sweeping away his own footprints with a palm branch so no human trace remains in the god's presence until morning. This has been performed every single day for longer than the entire span of recorded Western history. And for 3,000 years, measured in flood cycles, harvest records, dynastic succession lists, it worked. Then, in roughly 50 years, nearly everything ended. Between 1200 and 1150 BCE, every major palace civilization in the Eastern Mediterranean collapsed or was fundamentally altered. Mycenae. Ugarit, a cosmopolitan Syrian trading city so suddenly abandoned that archaeologists found emergency diplomatic correspondence still in the kiln, letters never fired, never sent, addressed to kings whose cities were already falling silent. The Hittite Empire, which had matched Egypt at Kadesh and negotiated history's first surviving peace treaty, simply ceased to exist. Egypt survived, barely. Ramesses III documented 2 major Sea Peoples incursions in carved relief at Medinet Habu, but the Egypt that emerged was smaller, fractured, and poised on the edge of a division that had been building since before you were born. By 1080 BCE, Herihor, high priest of Amun, ruled Upper Egypt from Thebes and inscribed his name in a royal cartouche on the walls of the Khonsu temple at Karnak. Not rebellion, not conquest. Just the patient, perfectly documented arrival of an outcome building for 150 years. And here is where the trail of power goes cold in a way that should make you deeply uneasy. Beneath the Khonsu temple floor, the very sanctuary where Herihor's cartouche still stands, preliminary ground-penetrating radar surveys have indicated anomalous subsurface formations consistent with sealed vaulted spaces, unregistered, unexcavated, located directly beneath the inner sanctuary's ancient foundation course. No one knows what is inside. No one knows who sealed it, and the people who did left no record that has ever been found. This is where the ancient world and the 21st century finally touch. The tools now being turned toward ancient Egypt represent the most significant methodological leap in Egyptology since hieroglyphics were deciphered in 1822. Picture a survey team deploying ground-penetrating radar across a delta wheat field at sunrise, the same field where farmers have plowed the same black soil for generations, and watching, on a screen the size of a notebook, the ghost of a 3,000-year-old palace library materialize from static. Room by room, column by column, a staircase descending into sealed darkness. All of it untouched, all of it waiting. At Per Ramesses, magnetometry surveys have identified the probable Per Ankh, the House of Life, the Palace Scriptorium, where astronomical calendars, medical texts, architectural specifications, and ritual manuals were copied and maintained. The intellectual engine of empire, located through 2 meters of delta sediment, mapped room by room, without a trowel yet breaking soil above it. The reconstructions have crossed a fidelity threshold previous generations could not have imagined. Paint residue microsampling, acoustic modeling of surviving stone, the comparative melodic grammar of Coptic Christian chant, representing an unbroken cultural transmission from ancient Egyptian temple liturgy through early Nile Valley Christianity, allows researchers to approximate the resonant signature of a hymn sung in Karnak's open court under a sky that has since watched the rise and fall of every empire that came after. The day you have followed? From that frankincense-heavy dawn through the afternoon's ritual machinery to the sealed cedar doors of the evening sanctuary was not a remarkable day. It was an ordinary day, one unremarkable rotation of the mechanisms that kept the sky positioned, the river banked, and 80 million acres of the world's most fertile soil under the authority of a man who was also, in the absolute conviction of everyone around him, a god. 3,000 years later, we are using machines that approximate human thought to reconstruct the world of a man who believed he was the machine that kept everything coherent and alive. Perhaps the distance between that certainty and our own is not what we assume. Every civilization believes in its deepest institutional confidence that it has solved permanence. Egypt believed this more convincingly and sustained it longer than any civilization in human history. They wrote in stone because stone outlasts papyrus, and papyrus outlasts memory. They aligned temples to the solstice horizon because the sun could be trusted to return. They encoded theology into administrative law and administrative law into granite, and for 3,000 years the system held. Then the high priest picked up his chisel, and the names of pharaohs carved with absolute certainty into monuments built to outlast the stars became, for 15 unbroken centuries, marks that no living person could read. Unreadable. What the AI reconstruction restores is not merely the color of a throne room or the sound of a temple hymn. It is the reminder that nothing built by human hands, however magnificently, however devotedly, is exempt from the eventual return of silence. And the gift of that knowledge is this: it makes the building matter more, not less. Subscribe to Forgotten Ages. Every week, we go back into the silence and bring something home. The frankincense still hangs in the air above the Nile, not as memory, not as metaphor, but as a literal particle of Boswellia sacra resin carried on a river wind from a tree that has been burning in temple courtyards since before your civilization had a name for fire's sacred properties. It was always there. You just needed 3,000 years and a machine that thinks to finally know how to breathe it.